just out of the blue, Larry looks up and he says, "Larry O'Brien, lucky fucking bastard." And you can imagine our reactions to this. And I looked at Mags and she looked at me and I said, "Did he say what I thought he said?" And she said, "I think so." And I said, "Well, yes, you are."
One of the difficulties with Larry living with other people was that he really needs to get up at 10 to 3 in the morning, and he really likes to shave at that time and play loud Mozart. Now that's absolutely fine if you live on your own. Nobody asks me what I do at 10 to 3 in the morning. But if you live with a lot of other people and you're striding past their bedrooms on the way and turning up the volume, you've probably made a lot of people irritated by the next morning.
Hello, Larry.
He doesn't sleep a lot. He gets up very, very early and is very interested in some private time, but also visits a neighbor who is also an early riser. And he has a lot of routines he likes in his week that his team have really helped him with. So, you know, he gets to go out and have a good look at the market. Certainly church is very important. He does his shopping. The whole household routines are at certain times of the day. He has changed those routines from time to time, but they do need to incorporate looking at clocks at 10:15 and 10 minutes to 3. At one time I had an electronics assembly company in Alexandria, Virginia, and Larry would come over and build circuit boards and wire harnesses on his holiday. He was brilliant. I've never taught anyone who was faster at learning the blueprints than Larry. But he'd need to stop and look at the clock at 10:15 and 10 to 3, even a very short look, because he was so interested in the circuit board. When he lived with my parents and was fairly bored with the activities available to him at the day service, he could take the bus perfectly fine, but he used to get off the bus early and go in and out all the shops in Bath, upsetting people because he wouldn't say anything. He'd just look for their music centres and their electronic tills and get in really close and not say anything, and people who didn't know him would get worried. And then he'd go to the day service for lunch, and then he'd leave again and do the same thing. And we had a lot of police bringing him home at that period of our lives. And it wasn't because he didn't have the skill, it's because he was bored with what was on offer, and so there were other routines he invented that worked better for him. One of the things Larry liked to do when he first moved to Bath Easton was to go around the village and look in people's windows. And Tim just made sure that he had his camera with him, because Larry's a great photographer. And so that if he upset somebody and they thought he was a burglar, Tim would just introduce him as a really talented photographer and say, "Would you like a picture of your living room or your barn," or whatever it was that Larry had sort of trespassed in order to get the photo. And sometimes he didn't have any film in the camera, so it was kind of a way of just introducing Larry as an artist rather than a disabled person or somebody who we had to control. If you believed that the person had a dream and some things that they really wanted in their life, some ways of putting information together and gathering people around that person to really make it happen. I got so excited and said, "Larry, I've learned about this new stuff, let's do it." And he's always been very tolerant of his younger sister. He's kind of let me undertake these experiments together. So we sat down and you know, after we'd done the preferences, we mapped out who was in his life and what was he doing every day, and what contribution was he making, and what places was he going to, and things of that nature. And they were all inside services, and they were all in groups of disabled people. There wasn't anything that had to do with who he was uniquely and what he wanted to do. And also there certainly wasn't any chance to contribute to society or his community. And we all started thinking about how could Larry have more of the things that he really loved and less of the things he didn't like. So that was the first tool I learned about personal futures planning. But it wasn't enough on its own. What we mostly did was irritate the services who were supporting Larry by asking lots of questions and saying, couldn't you change, and couldn't it be like this, and couldn't Larry have lots of visitors, and couldn't he go here and there? And it was just too hard for them to deal with. We became probably the family from hell. So we started looking for someone to help us. We asked the service who was supporting him at the time whether they'd like to help him move to our village, and they couldn't at that time. And we asked social services, and they were worried because there wasn't a service in our village. They worried that he wouldn't have enough support. And we asked lots and lots of other service providers, and in the end we found Aspects and Milestones who were willing to work with us. This was wonderful. They wanted to learn alongside us. Larry had the beginnings of a wonderful team around him, and one of those people was Tim Bartlett, who I just think is amazing. He gave up a career in environmental publishing to work with my brother, and the relationship they have is just remarkable. And he ended up applying for the team leader position and really shaping what happened over the years for Larry, including introducing other tools. He introduced essential lifestyle planning and PATH to Larry, which are all really great tools, but they capture different things. I found out about facilitated communication and first of all introduced that to Larry, and then together we introduced it to Tim and others, and I think it's helped all the people around him see a lot more who he is beyond the autism. You know, the essential Larry comes through in the letterboard, so that's really important. But we also have all learned to pay a whole lot more attention to things like the packed suitcase. You know, saying, who needs to be more eloquent than that about how I'd like to leave this place? He draws people to him partly because we live in such a busy world that's so frantic and also quite selfish. You know, Larry needs some support, and he invites it in such a gracious way that I think he teaches us a lot about how the world ought to be. And he has influenced so many people that have crossed his path, both personally and also at conferences. So I'm always amazed how many Christmas cards he gets from people I've never heard of, because he's meant so much to people. He's touched people in many, many different ways, whether he has given hope and strength to people with learning difficulties and their families, or whether he has helped somebody decide, I am going to go back and study because of what Larry taught me, or whether he's helped people who offer support to change their practice because of what he has to say. He's just made such a difference to so many people. So I think the learning will continue.